So tell us your name, please, sir.
Todd Crosby.
And Mr. Crosby, how are you employed?
I am employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Perry.
If you'll spell your first and last name for the court reporter.
It's Todd, T-O-D-D, Crosby, C-R-O-S-B-Y.
How long have you been employed as an agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
18 years.
And what specifically do you do for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
I am the Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Perry office, as well as the Assistant Special Agent in charge over the GBI crime scene program.
Now, when we talk about a crime scene and crime scene program, are you also certified to handle and process crime scenes?
I worked crime scenes for 15 and a half years out in the field, and now in my position as the coordinator for the GBI crime scene program, I also go out still in the field if there's a very high-profile case. I also handle their training as well as their coordinating for equipment.
Okay. If you also, you've given us a little bit of that with the answer to that question. If you will give the jury the benefit of your training experience and allow you to do your job as a crime scene analyst.
When I started with the GBI in 2001, I was assigned to a field office in Eastman. In October of 2001, I was assigned to a crime scene position in Milledgeville. Since that time in 2001, I've went to over 1,800 hours of forensic training. 400 of those hours were advanced forensics training at the University of Tennessee's National Forensics Academy. A lot of folks may know that as the body form training. And that's where we received 400 hours or 10 weeks of training. In that, we also had the advanced training in bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting incident reconstruction, as well as clandestine grave recovery and latent print processing.
Now, with regard to your experience as a crime scene analyst, have you testified in court to this state regarding your analysis at a crime scene?
Yes, I have.
And about how many times have you done that, Agent Crosby?
More than 25.
All right. Agent Crosby, I want to direct your attention to February 27th of 2017. Did you come to a location in Ben Hill County, Georgia, with regards to the case involving Tara Grinstead?
Yes, I did.
And what was your purpose of going to that to Ben Hill County on February 27th of 2017?
On February 27th, I was asked to come and meet with the owner of that property, Mr. Randy Hudson. Mr. Hudson was to show us an area and some pine trees where a burn had occurred in October of 2005, where he had seen where household trash and area had been burned there in the pine trees.
Now, in fact, did you meet with Mr. Hudson?
I was there when he was met with, yes, sir.
All right, and did Mr. Hudson take you, that is Mr. Randy Hudson, did he take y'all to a location in those pine trees?
Yes, he did.
All right, and as a result of that, tell me what you did.
Mr. Hudson carried us into the pine trees. It was a logging road, and off of that logging road, there was two other logging roads. On a previous date, we had been down the first logging road. We had been shown an area there, and we had searched that area. And on this date, on the 27th, when Mr. Hudson came out, he carried us to the second logging road and showed us this area. Once he had showed us the general area where this occurred, I used a technique called a witching technique. It's used for looking for bones. You want me to go ahead and go into how that works, Mr. Rigby?
Well, we'll come back to it. That's okay. I kind of skipped over that first part. So prior to you meeting with Mr. Hudson and Mr. Hudson showing you a location in the orchard in the pine trees, you said you had been there a previous day. Is that right? That's
correct. On the 21st, which was the week prior, Mr. Bo Dukes had showed us an area down the first road off the logging road. And he had identified two different areas there where a body may have possibly been burned. It was in one of those areas using that witching technique that I had a hit for bones or for remains. We excavated that site and we did find bones, but it was animal bones. This technique does not discriminate between animal or human. It just says there's bones there. So we found bones in that pit, and then he had showed us another area. And once we cleared that area and raked all the debris off, we didn't see, and I ran the witching rods over it, did not get a hit. So what we used in that area was a different tool, just a soil core. And what we were looking for in the soil core was burn material to show that there may have been a burn there or some disturbed earth. And we didn't find any of that in that area, in that second pit. On the 22nd, Mr. Dukes asked to come back to the area, and because he had realized he had told us the wrong road to go down. So he was brought back over to the pecan orchard by Special Agent Logan Holland, and then he went with me, Mr. Dukes did, and walked me up the hill down the second road and showed me a general area down that second road where this burn may have occurred. It was on the 27th when Mr. Hudson carried us in there. We went down that second road again, and probably 50 yards from where Mr. Dukes had showed me is where Mr. Hudson showed us that the burn had occurred. And it was in this area that I started walking with the rods again. I got a hit where Mr. Hudson had pointed out, but I also had been told that there was some household trash burned in this time span also. So I started walking the general area, and about 20 yards east of where Mr. Hudson had showed us the spot where he thought it was, I saw some household trash. It was like a fork, I think a broken piece of plate, the bottom end, the screw end to a light bulb was all in this area, and I started running the rods in that area and got a hit for bone also. So on the 27th, all we did was I marked off those areas, and then we came back on the 28th to start excavation of the area.
Now, Agent Crosby, I'm going to show you a series of photographs, and they're marked States Exhibits 43 through 47. I ask you to look at those, please, sir.
Numbers
43 through 47. Are you familiar with what's shown in each of those photographs?
Yes, I am.
Generally, what do each of those photographs show?
This 43 through, State Exhibit 43 through 47 shows that area on the 21st that Mr. Dukes had showed us. It shows the area marked out or gridded off for us to do our search, as well as flags in place, and it also shows where we've cleared the debris from the area and have conducted an excavation of one of the areas.
When we say excavation, kind of what generally do you mean by excavation for the areas?
This is where we go in and we're removing small amounts of dirt. We're actually using small spades, hand spades, or trowels, and we're removing half an inch to an inch of dirt at a time, putting this into a bucket. And the way this generally works, and it's according to how big of an area you're doing, in this case with this first day, we did a 10 foot by 10 foot grid. And those grids, or that area rather, is split off into 4 different quadrants. And you can number them, you can letter them. We lettered these A, B, C, and D. And you also have buckets there with those same letters on the side. So only dirt from quadrant A goes in the A bucket, and dirt from quadrant B. That way when you're sifting or screening this, because you're sifting and screening this, and in this particular case, we used 2 different sizes of screens. We screened it through a 1/4 inch size screen first, and we screened it on top of, onto a tarp. Once that one was done, we would remove that 1/4 inch screen, put on an 1/8 of an inch screen, and then re-screen the dirt again. And all that allows you to do is find smaller debris, smaller particles that you may be looking for. And once you get down to what they call virgin earth or undisturbed earth, you stop. Or either when you start finding something. That's when we stop, and that's when we know we're finished with that pit.
Right. Now, with regard to each of these photographs, States 43 through 47, this was a first location that you were looking at. And did you find anything here in this particular area?
In the pit, in the first pit we found animal bones. In the second pit, we did not get a hit with this witching technique. And so we just cored it, looking in the core of dirt for burned material or disturbed earth. And we didn't find anything in that one either.
So each of these photographs, States Exhibits 43 through 47, truly now can depict the first area location where y'all began the excavation technique.
Yes, it does.
Judge, at this time, I would tend to state it's 43 to 47.
No objection.
All right, there, Admitter.
Now, I'm showing you on that screen, Agent Crosby states Exhibit 43. Tell me what we're looking at here, please, sir.
Yes, sir. This is the first area that Mr. Dukes showed us. This is where we've put down the markers or put down those stakes, and then we've made a 10 by 10 square, and we've gridded it off. Those flags that you see there are areas that the witching technique hit on.
States Exhibit number 44.
States Exhibit number 44, you can see that we have the A, B, C's, and D is over there in the left-hand corner. You see we have the buckets out, and we've raked back this area. And when we do this, we also check that ground debris. So that ground debris is put on top of a tarp, dragged to the side, and somebody is assigned with going through that debris, looking for any pertinent items of evidence.
And States Exhibit number 45.
This is where we've excavated down. You can see that it's been dug out around the roots, and all that dirt has been sifted through or screened, looking for evidence. And at this point, we've gotten to the bottom of the pit. Nothing was found here except for those animal bones.
States Exhibit number 46.
All right, 46 that you see, that's that second area. The flags in there is where we've been coring. This is where we've cored out earth, and we have looked at those cores, looking for any burnt items or burnt objects in that core.
And States Exhibit 47.
And that's the same pit. That's that second pit on that first week that we did just the core samples on.
Now, with regard to these areas, nothing other than animal bones found, is that right?
That is correct.
Now, after that day, I believe you said Mr. Dukes came back on the 22nd of February with Agent Holland and showed you a second area, is that right?
That is correct.
And then you also had Mr. Hudson, Randy Hudson, show you an area close in a location to that area, is that right?
That is correct. On the 22nd, Mr. Dukes walked me up to the second road, showed me an area. I marked it with a flag. And at that time, we decided to wait for Mr. Hudson to come back into the state. He was at a conference or something. It would not be back in until Sunday. That's why we didn't meet with him until the 27th. On the 27th, when he met us there, he carried us to the same general area that Mr. Dukes had taken us to the previous Friday or the previous week. And within 50 yards of where Mr. Dukes had showed us is where Mr. Hudson said this was the area. So that area was marked. It was searched with the rods or with the witching technique, and then started looking around, found the household garbage, and started running the rods in that area and got a hit for bones in that area also.
Now, we talked about this witching technique a little bit. If you will, kind of describe for me what you mean by the witching technique.
So when the body ceases to exist, the bone starts generating something called piezoelectricity. And for your benefit, that's piezoelectricity. So it's piezoelectricity. And piezio comes from the Greek word pressure, or to confine. So or to constrict. So it's got to be some type of pressure there on the bones. Well, that pressure can be from dirt being on top of the bones. It could be from skin, from decomposition pushing down on the bones. It can be even air pressure pushing down on the bones that generates this piezoelectricity. That in turn generates an electromagnetic field. That electromagnetic field is what's causing the metal rods to cross whenever you go over bone. Again, it does not discriminate between animal or human bone. It just says it's bone.
Now, over the course of your time as a GBI agent and a crime scene analyst, have you used this technique multiple times?
Numerous times.
And how many times would you say that you've used it?
Oh, more than 50.
All right. Now, have you brought some things with you here today to demonstrate the technique that you're speaking of?
At your request, yes, sir.
Okay. And tell me what you brought with you.
Well, I got the rods. And these rods, y'all, are nothing more than clothes hangers. It's just metal rods. Also, I brought some straws. I can dig them out of my pocket. And these straws are to keep me from touching the rods. That way y'all won't think I'm twisting them in my hand. But it's also where they can swing freely. Whenever you're walking, you want them to swing freely. And then in the bag there on the table, there's a box that has bones in it. It's deer bones. It's just teeth from a deer, a couple of small bones that have broken off of the deer.
Now, I'm showing you this white box that was in this brown paper bag. Let me ask you to look at it. Is that what you just described for us?
Yes, sir, it is.
Right. And with both your the hangers with the straws as well as this box here of the bones, would that assist you in demonstrating to the jury this witching technique?
Yes, it would.
Right. Judge, I'd ask at this time, Mr. Agent Crosby asked to step down.
You may step down.
If I could assist you, Agent Crosby, tell me what I need to do. Otherwise, I'm going to stay out of
So
your way.
I'm going to put them down right here. Can y'all hear me? I'm going to put them here. And you got to be walking, not running, but walking at a brisk pace. You ain't got to walk. You can't stop. You got to keep walking. And when you get over them, they'll cross. So they cross when they get over bone. One of the other ways that you could use this, if you don't know a general area and you're trying to find, and the risk you run with this, if there's, as I'm doing this demonstration, if there's a cemetery out that way, they may cross before I get to the box, so we don't see. But you can stagger them one above the other, and when you get in line with it, the top will return. The other thing you can do with them to help you find, as I stand here now, I'm shaking because I'm up here in front of y'all, nervous. So you don't see the rods really going back and forth side to side. But as I get over and I point at the source of the bones, they'll start swinging back and forth. So it's just a tool. It's a search tool to help us cut down the size of the area. Whenever somebody said, hey, there may be skeletal remains here, it's just a tool to help us cut down on that search or the size of our search to get a more general location.
Thank you, Agent Crosby. Your Honor, my understanding is some people from the back row may not have been able to see. If I need to, if maybe
Is there anyone that couldn't see?
do it again, if they want to stand up, I can have Agent Crosby do it again.
Does anyone raise your hand if you couldn't see? What is? I think everybody.
Now, Agent Crosby, with regard to this technique that you just demonstrated for the jurors here, did you use this technique at that first site as well?
Yes, I did.
And I think you said you found what appeared to be animal bones there, is that right?
It was identified by the anthropologist. It was animal bones.
Now, with regard to the second location that you went to that identified by Mr. Bowditch on the 22nd of February, and then subsequently a general same location by Mr. Hudson on the 27th of February 2017, did you use this technique in that location as well?
Yes, I did.
And after using this technique, what did you find in that location?
Well, on the 27th, after I ran the rods, put down some flags, we decided we needed to call in more agents to assist in this search because of the size of the area. So on the 28th, we all came back together, 57 GBI agents from across the state, to include several administrators, came together in this area where we had gotten to hit on the previous date on the 27th. And we started in Pit 1, and Pit 1 was the area identified by Mr. Hudson and where I'd gotten hit with the rods. And we started excavating that area, and then in that area we also found non-human bones. So we were finished in Pit 1. After we removed that, ran the rods back over the area and didn't get another hit. We'd also started excavating that site where the household trash was. And it was in that area that we saw a burned, or the earth was a different color, the dirt was a different color after we excavated everything out. And there was, we did several grids there, finding what was later identified by the anthropologists as human remains. And in that area, there was a fire break there that had been cut over the years for burning the area. And so we went down that fire break also, just out of an abundance of caution, that when the plow came around, if it would have drug any bones down that fire break. So we spent 3 days out there excavating this site. So we had several of those grids that you saw earlier, but we kept on adding on to it just out of an abundance of caution to make sure we had covered that area well.
Hey, Mr. Crosby, I just want to clarify one point. Most of us are good country boys and understand what a fire break is, but can you explain to us what a fire break is? Sure.
It's an area where the forestry or somebody has come through there with a plow. They have plowed an area down through the trees to keep fire, when they do a controlled burn, from jumping and getting into another section of trees.
Thank you. I'm going to show you several photographs, that being States Exhibits 48 through 60, and ask if you'll look at each of those, please, sir. Have you had a chance to review each of those photographs?
Yes, I have.
And generally, what do each of those photographs show?
These photographs show the dig started on the 28th of February. And it shows the sites of Pit 1 and Pit 2, and then it shows Pit 2 and how far down we dug, as well as how far out we went in this search.
Do each of those photographs truly and accurately depict that second area where you did excavation, as you've already described for us?
Yes, it does.
Judge, I would tender States Exhibits 48 through 60.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, there in a minute.
Mr. Crosby is showing you States Exhibit number 48 on the screen. Just tell me what we're looking at here.
Now, you can see the fire break down the middle. It's approximately the middle of the picture here. To your right side over here, Mr. Reeby, could you slide that? Yep, that way. Keep on going, please, sir. It's in this general area where you see the blue flag, and behind it, where Mr. Hudson had pointed out the area where he remembered the burn being. So that was the first area where the rods were ran and got a hit for bones being there. And then if you could slide it back the other way, please, sir. And it's in this area on the left-hand side where you see the flags and all, that's where the burned trash, or the trash was, the household trash was, and that's where I started getting hits for bone, in that area on that side of the fire break. States Exhibit 49, again, that's that general area that Mr. Hudson had pointed out whenever he showed us where he remembered the area being, and we're just prepping it. You can see we're getting the tarps out, and we're prepping to get all that ground debris out of there. That way we can search through it and lay out our grid. Again, there's our fire break, and you can still see some of the flags there to your right, or to your left, rather, I'm sorry. States Exhibit number 50, this is the actual excavation of Pit 1. This is that area that Mr. Hudson showed us. This is the one where he got a hit. Also, you can see that gray bucket. It's got an A on the side of it. That's what I was talking about earlier. That was quadrant A. It has a specific bucket that goes with it. That way, if we find something in quadrant A while sifting, at least we know what quadrant it came out of. Hold on for a minute, Mr. Reed. The metal pole there in the middle, it's got a T on top, that's that soil core. So as we're going through doing this, that's just another tool that we have available to us. We go through and we core the soil to see if we're picking up any burned material or any remains that may be there that we can pull out of the soil. So that's what I was talking about earlier when I said we were coring the soil. That's the tool we use for that. States Exhibit 51 is where we have started into Pit 2 now. This is that area where the household trash was found. This is the area where the rods were run and we got a hit for bones. So we're preparing it. We've gotten the ground debris out. And now while one group is over in a corner going through the ground debris, we're starting to remove dirt and we're starting to sift through it with that 1/4 inch and then 1/8 inch screen. States Exhibit 52 is just showing the grid itself and that dirt there that's discolored in the middle. States Exhibit 53, as you can see, there's a change in the dirt and it looks like a diamond. That's a technique we use as we're going through and doing this excavation. And so what we've done is we have dug down maybe a 1/2 inch deeper inside that diamond, closer to that center pole there. And if we find something in that dirt, we know we're in the right grid. We know we're in the right quadrant. So we're cutting our work in half at this point, still searching. Again, this is a search tool, and that's all we're doing is we're searching that dirt as we go through. Eventually, we'll have taken down this whole area right here a couple of inches, just looking for any bones or evidence that was present. And that's just another view of what you just saw, us diamonding out that area. And that's just another angle from what you just saw previously.
States Exhibit number 55.
All right, States Exhibit number 55, and you can see the sides of the pit now and how deep we're getting into this pit. The way we normally go about doing these things is once we get, we'll dig another 1/2 inch of soil out of this pit. We'll sift it all. If we don't find anything in there, we'll do it one more time just to make sure we're being thorough. If we do it a second time and don't get any evidence or anything out of it, we consider that quadrant is done. So you can see how deep that we're getting down now into the soil, looking for these remains and other evidence.
States Exhibit 56.
And this is just a picture of quadrant F and G, and again, you can see how deep we're getting down. You saw in some of those previous ones the diamond, and I told you we were going to take it all down like that. You can see here that we've taken it all down to the same level. And again, we're going through this, and if we don't find anything, we dig down another 1/2 inch, remove another 1/2 inch of soil, go through it again just to be thorough.
States Exhibit 57.
And this is just, again, showing all you quadrants. We ended up with several quadrants, I think all the way up to S or T, once we had taken this all the way down the fire break that we dug out of. And just another view, now you can see they're all down to the same level, and we're still digging, removing dirt from those areas and sifting or screening through them looking for evidence. This is where we've started expanding. If you were standing in the middle of the pit, in that picture we showed you first, it showed which way the fire break went. Now we've extended all of this down that fire break, down along the edge of the fire break, and this is some of the grids that's down along the edge of the fire break. Could you pull that down, please? Yes, sir, right there. You see in the background agents working where we're standing at the edge of the original pits, so you can see how far out we took these pits or different quadrants, looking and digging and screening through the earth looking for these remains.
With regard to, there were buckets in each quadrant. Once a bucket was filled, what happened with the dirt from that bucket?
We had several sifting stations set up. Again, we had 57 agents from across the state there on all days that we were doing this. So once dirt was removed from a quadrant, it was taken to a sifting station, and they put a clean tarp or tarp with no dirt on it down up under their sifters, poured the dirt in, sifted through it, looked for the debris, looked for evidence. And then once they finished with that 1/4-inch sift, they take the sifter off, move their stand over, put a new tarp down, put an 1/8 of an inch screen on it, and rescreen all that dirt again. And once it was finished, it was put into one pile.
Now, we're talking about sifters. Is that going to be similar to what you use for sifting flour or something like that? Is that kind of something similar to that?
Something similar to this, to that. We had made some out of 2x4s. We had made 2 foot by 2 foot boxes, and we had put hardware cloth on the bottom of it. Some hardware cloth was 1/4 of an inch, others was 1/8 of an inch. And with that, there were eye bolts in the sides of the 2x4s that ran up to a T-piece type stand. That way you could stand there and shake the sifters. Dirt would fall through onto the tarp, and then anything that was big that was left in there, you could actually pick it up, look at it, examine it, take it to the anthropologist, let her look at it and tell you what it was.
And throughout this process there at this second location, you and other agents found items that were taken to the anthropologist for her identification. Is that right?
Correct. She was there with us the whole time.
Thank you. Now, are you familiar with what county that location was in?
That was on Ben Hill.
Okay, thank you. That's the problem.
Mr. Fox, you may cross-examine the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no questions for S.A. Crosby.
Maybe excuse John.
Any objection to being excused?
No, Your Honor, not from the statement.
All right, you're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.